Hey, this is Mad Matt.
And Hard Coral.
We're going to talk to you about intake mods. Free intake mods that give you a lot more horsepower, torque, and free economy. This is free. This is something you can do. And this is part 2. Because I heard a lot of stuff in part 1 that just kind of started to irritate me. So here I am again. And I'm going to break it down Barney style.
There you go.
And she's even wearing the Barney color right there. Yeah. So here we go. All right. A lot of people said you can't do this to a new car. Well, this is a 2014 Ford F-150 twin turbo EcoBoost 3.5 liter. And if you look at my dyno video, you'll see this sucker put down 392 horsepower and 529 pounds of torque. And you look up the stock specifications of any other F-150 stock that's been on the dyno, you know this one reads a lot higher on the dyno. And it pulls like you wouldn't believe. And it's also a lot heavier than most trucks too. This is my tow beast. Alright, here we go. Now, to my dyno results, one of the really big factors that helped it out was my intake mod. I also did an exhaust mod along with it, which I covered in another video, Exhaust Basics Discussion. So watch that video too. I talk about free-flowing mufflers because the factory ones are heavy and very restrictive and make the engine hard to get those exhaust gases out. In a factory intake, it's hard to get the intake in, so you're struggling to breathe air in. And with the factory exhaust, you're struggling to get exhaust out. So you want a nice balance. But I'm showing you the free intake mods again because I guess a lot of people didn't get it. And here I am, readdressing it. So, from the factory, if we could get Hard Coral to shine some light on the subject.
Oh, yeah, let's do this.
All right, this thing breathes out of a tiny little hole that looks like a little miniature trumpet. It looks like a little miniature trumpet, and that's the only place it's getting its air for this hungry 3.5 liter twin turbo V6. Well, here's what I did. Number 1, this part is not free, a K&N air filter, but this mod can still be done with the factory paper filter with no problem, which means it's free. So I also want you to take the light and look in to my grill where the cold incoming air, I repeat, cold incoming air
All through there.
goes right inside, goes right under, in, and gets forced into my K&N air filter through the hole I put in my air box before the filter on the dirty side. So it shoves the air through my air filter, then goes into the clean side of my air box, goes through the mass airflow sensor and the air intake temp, goes right to the turbochargers. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit better how this mod looks. I'm going to have Hard Coral take off the plumbing and take off the air cleaner clean side, and we're going to show you the K&N and the mod I did to the filter. Wait 1. Basically, we're going to push the tube, lift, and pull this way. And out she goes. Okay, now come look at the clean side. Here's the clean side of the K&N filter. This part of the box you never cut.
Ever.
I got a lot of people telling me in comments, you're telling people to cut the air box and you get dirt into the engine. Okay, listen here. This is the clean side. You never cut the clean side. Indicated by, see how clean the air filter is? This is the clean side.
Clean, very clean.
Now, I remove the air filter, and down here is the dirty side where the air comes in. See where I cut? Here's the factory tiny little
Super
tube
small.
right there. This is all the air that goes into this engine. Well, look what I did. I cut the entire box open, and it faces the front of the grill. Cold air comes in through here. Cold air comes from under here and through the fender as well as the stock intake. And look at all the airflow going to my K&N. And I told you about the dirty side. Remember, dirty side, you cut the dirty side only. It goes through the filter, through to the clean side, and it's also ram air. This is ram air going through. Shoves it
All
through the air
natural.
cleaner and through the clean side of the air box, into this intake tubes, into the twin turbos. So remember, clean side of air box, you never cut the clean side. Only the dirty side where the air comes in from the outside, passes through the air cleaner, through your top of the air intake box, the clean side, through the engine, in the turbos, and through the engine, and that's where the power's made and all the boost. And that's what we want. So, put this guy back in here. All right, so moving on, I also heard some comments and other things, and people were stating that a factory air cleaner with that factory little choking tube breathes better than any aftermarket air filter or pod filter could ever do. Now I hear people talk about pod filters. They talk about pod filters like that's just common knowledge. Okay, a pod filter, it won't perform any better than a factory intake box. Well, you know what? That's not true. It depends solely on the size of the filter. People call them pod filters, I call them aftermarket air cleaners, aftermarket air filters that are not paper and they breathe more free. We're going to walk over to the back of my shop and I'm going to show you several examples of different sized air filters that breathe better than the factory ever could. All right, now I'm going to talk to you about some of the comments I received, and it was a blanket statement saying pod filters, basically calling all these things the same, like this filter here and that filter there.
Yeah, this one right here.
People are just calling them pod filters, just as a blanket statement. Well, okay, pod filters will not flow any better than a stock intake box. True or false? I say false, because number one, okay, not all pod filters are created equal. Okay? You got this kind of a so-called pod filter, which is a K&N air filter, and this air filter is designed to go in a Dodge Neon, a very small engine, a 2-liter 4-cylinder. So yes, it's appropriately sized. And see some of these other air cleaners, like say this Apexi Performance Air Cleaner is designed for an engine with 2 intakes. So 2 of these together have enough intake area to support the 3-liter V6 that they go on. So air filters, whether they're pod filters or any other air filter, need to be appropriately sized. That's the important part. Like you don't put that tiny filter on a 5-liter Coyote V8 on a Ford Mustang, or my big 3.5 twin turbo truck. You don't do that. That is too small. Look at the tiny intake area.
Very restrictive.
It's good for a small displacement engine, but for a large truck, or this Buick here, my 87 Buick Regal Turbo T Limited with a 4.5-liter stroker, T76 turbocharger, it needs a big air filter to breathe. Now, let me show you the factory air cleaner that came out of this car. Look at that. This is where the clean air goes to the engine or to the inlet of the compressor on the turbocharger. See how small that is? Now,
tiny.
Here's where the incoming air comes from outside to this tiny little hole.
Tiny.
And see this tiny little box, this tiny little hole? And that air has to feed this
entire engine.
So tell me, folks, that blanket statement is not correct. Now, if I was to just say a blanket statement, this factory air filter flows better than this pod filter? I say not. And the reason is not because it's a pod filter, not because this is a stock air filter, but this filter is large and appropriately sized for the big engine that it supplies air for. You see, it has an extra inlet right inside the air filter. So not only does it have all this inlet area, it also has one in the center too. And cold air does come from under the car and it goes right into that air filter. And another thing I hear from people is I hear that, oh, if you do this to your car and you take out the factory air box, you're going to get hot air in your engine. You're introducing hot air to your engine. Well, let me tell you, that's a false statement too. The reason why? Okay, this engine's cold right now. Feel that engine. Feel that engine. Tell me what it feels like.
It's pretty chilly.
It's pretty cold. If I drive this engine for 30 minutes and run this engine, and I open the hood, how do you think that engine's going to feel after 30 minutes of driving?
Caliente.
It's going to be
Hot.
damn hot. And since it's going to be hot, that cold air theory everybody talks about, it just kind of dissipates into air. Now, you're going to get some cool air, but after 30 minutes of this engine running nice and hot, it's going to be hot here, hot there. It's going to go in the intercooler and get a little bit cooler, but you still have a hot engine. So yes, it'll help a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, after driving a car for 30 minutes and running your engine for 30 minutes plus, it's hot. So no matter how much cold intake air you have, it's not going to change the heat of the engine and the combustion. When the piston goes down and grabs that intake air, whether it's boosted or not, it's hot. Then compression happens, and it's even hotter. Then the power stroke, and it's super hot, and that's where your power goes, all right? So there's another thing on the comments I received that are false. Now, we're going to talk about some old school cars too. Remember back in the 70s, and you look under the hood of a Camaro, and it had an air cleaner that looked like this, but it was sealed up. It was sealed up and had a little trumpet little thing coming out, and that was the only air supply it had. Now, aftermarket companies like Edelbrock, they solved the problem by looking here. Look at the air filter all the way around the air cleaner.
All the way around.
It breathes good. And that inner circle is where your carburetor inlet is. So see all that breathing area you have?
Lots.
Where the factory choked it with a little
Tiny
straw. So imagine running down the track, right?
Yeah.
You're running down the track breathing out of a straw. How fast are you going to run?
Very, very slow.
Very, very, very slow.
Car with, yeah.
You'll be out of breath. Exhaust is the same way. In, out. In, out. An engine is no different. In for intake, nice and smooth and balanced. Out with the exhaust, nice and smooth and balanced. Another thing for F-150 EcoBoost owners and some other cars, they have these little restricted little tornado guys. These restricted little tornado dudes. And on the EcoBoost twin turbo Ford, the little one goes here.
Restrictor.
And it's restrictive, and the big one goes there. And I ask myself, why would they put these in there? Okay, you see those Vortec commercials all the time where people say, the tornado makes your air swirl into your engine. Well, you know what? That's all fine and dandy for a natural aspirated engine.
Yep.
But a twin turbo engine, the turbo's spool. You don't need these. Because the air goes in to the turbochargers. The turbochargers spin them and spool them and shove them in your engine. Therefore, these things are just decorations.
Yeah.
They look like good paperweights to me, or something just set on the shelf and show you guys for fun. So these things here is one of the things that silence the sound on this engine. Like for example, if you have a twin turbo car, wouldn't you like to hear your turbocharger and hear that whoosh? Don't you want to hear your turbos whoosh? Well, my intake mod, in combination with removing these guys here, will give you that nice turbo whoosh sound and more airflow going to those turbos. More airflow equals free power, free torque, and fuel economy. So remember that, guys. That's for your F-150 and twin turbo V6 engines, and other turbo cars use this too, but this is okay for a natural aspirated car because it will swirl your air going to your throttle body because they don't have turbochargers in them. Thanks again for watching Budget Boostin'. If you like us on YouTube, Like us on our YouTube page. It's great. Like us on Facebook. Check out our budget boosting website. It's got all kinds of great stuff on it. Click on all the good stuff there.
Yeah.
Check it out. Check out our window stickers. Go to eBay, Buy It Now auctions. Put them on your car today. Make any car look just cool. And remember, knowledge is power.
It's horsepower.
And the way he did this Japanese nostalgic look. See the little stealth roll bar in there too? It's even got a roll bar in there as well. Interior turned out really nice. You can see some of the good stuff in there. A lot of work has gone into this 240Z.